and money was tight. It was 2001, we were both in our early 20s. I couldn't find a job and relied on word of mouth to earn some cash wherever I could. I loved to clean and organize, so I gave friends and family the go-ahead to give out my name and number to anyone who could use my help over the summer. Dan, his brother, and Dad all did carpentry work, and also got work through word of mouth. None of them had too many exciting stories to tell, other than doing work in a hoarder's home or odd requests, as far as cabinet design or placement. Dan got a call from an elderly woman wondering if he can come by and give her an estimate on finishing her kitchen. She said her husband died before he could install the cabinets and the countertop that he purchased, and someone from her church gave her his number. He said absolutely, and offered to come out the next day. She objected and said, "This needs to be done now, that's why I called. You said you could help me. What am I supposed to do? I'm an old woman. I live all alone, my husband died." Dan was a pretty chill guy and kept calm, explaining that I had his car and I wouldn't be home from running errands for a couple of hours, and by then, it would be too dark for him to come out. Let me also note that although Dan had a soft, not very masculine voice, he was a big guy, about 6'4" and muscular. The old lady perked up and asked, "Will she be coming along tomorrow?" in the sweetest voice. Dan said, looking back, this should have been a red flag by the tone in her voice, and the fact that she was so adamant about him coming right that moment. But as soon as she heard he had a girlfriend, she changed her tune and got excitement in her voice, asking about the next day like it was no problem for her to wait. He didn't see anything weird about it at the time and felt bad for her because he thought she must have been lonely and wanting company to talk to. The next day we both head out to her house. We brought along a small bouquet of flowers that we got at the grocery store to give her. I figured she would enjoy chatting while Dan checked out her kitchen, and maybe I could come back with Dan and help her with other things around the house while he worked if she needed. Her township was about 45 minutes away, but I was excited to go because this township is known to have really awesome old houses and mansions. There are other normal subdivisions depending on what direction you drive in. My friends and I back in high school used to drive there just to cruise around and look at neat houses. When we pulled up to the old lady's house, I was eager to go inside because it was such a cute looking house from the outside. Very fairy tale-ish. Grey and white trim, with vines climbing up the side of the house. It was a shotgun-style house, so it looked tiny from the front. The small lawn was overgrown and messy, but I thought it added to the charm of the home. We knock on the door and we are greeted by a tiny elderly woman, shorter than me, and I'm 5 feet. She had on a dirty nightgown and even dirtier slippers. She looked past Dan and smiled wildly at me, reaching her bony hands out to grab my face. I hold up the flowers to deflect and say, "Dan wanted me to bring you some flowers." She lost her smile, grabbed the flowers and said, "Kitchen's through here." She turned around and led us, revealing a brown stain on the back of her nightgown. Dan and I look at each other and he makes a goofy, grossed out face. I make a judgmental face back and swat his arm as if to say, "Be nice, she's an old woman." We walk through the dark living room, nothing really out of the ordinary, other than this smell, which was like cigarettes, mold, and body odor. We enter the kitchen, and there's a closed door about 10 to 12 feet ahead. leading to rooms further back into the house. There's a man sitting shirtless at the kitchen table in the corner. He was hairy and overweight, with greasy hair down to his shoulders. The old lady said, "This is my son Marcus." He was probably in his late 30s, early 40s. He said nothing but stood up and took his bowl to the sink. Great. Marcus had no pants on. Just dirty, and I mean crazy dirty. Tidy whities and several holes around the waistband. I shot Dan the same grossed out look that he shot me earlier. He jokingly shoots me back a judgmental look and swats my arm. I give him a "no, seriously, I'm creeped out" look, and he nods to acknowledge it. "So what cabinets are you?" Dan tried to ask, but was interrupted with Marcus pointing to the flowers and asking the old lady, "Who are those from?" She points to Dan, and Marcus snatches the flowers out of her hand, throws them into an open trash bag sitting on the floor, and walks out of the kitchen into the living room we just walked through. He just lost his dad, so I assumed he had some sort of mental disability and was being sensitive about another dude showing his mom attention. So where are the cabinets and countertop that you need installed?" Dan asked the old woman. "I thought you were bringing them," she huffed out, sounding shocked that he would even ask that. Sorry. I thought you said your husband bought them and that you needed them installed," Dan said, confused and a bit nervous about how the woman is reacting. "So you brought nothing? What is it you do? What is it you're going to try to sell me?" She gets closer to Dan as she's throwing up her hands in disbelief and anger. Marcus comes quickly stomping in at the sound of his mother's distress. Rushing in from the other door past the kitchen was another man around the same age. Wonderful, this guy is in his underwear too. Fucking dirty tighty whities. The woman told Dan on the phone that she lived all alone. The new guy freezes just past the doorway and just stares at me, standing feet away. Marcus reaches forward and stands between us and his mother, and pushes her towards the living room. Both doors are blocked by the fucking tidy whitey twins. Dan scoops me behind him in an attempt to block me from both guys. "We gotta be heading out now," he said calmly, hoping not to escalate things. We hear the old lady squawk out loud, "Ah!" from the living room. Marcus doesn't move. "I'll see what I can do about the cabinets," Dan said as we inch forward. Marcus barely inches forward but still blocks the way. I frantically tug on Dan's arm to get him to look over at the other guy, now with his hand down his dirty underrag, masturbating. That's when my calm, chill boyfriend loses it. I never heard him scream like this. He remembers growing up, his older brother taught him how to deal with bullies. Say some crazy messed up shit to them, and they'll be too stunned to react. Dan screams with rage. "The last person that cornered me got beat to fucking death. I'll fucking kill you and your fucking mom if you don't get the fuck out of my way. My boys are gonna come gang rape your fucking skulls if you don't back the fuck off." Veins popping, spit flying. Marcus looked surprised and he rushed past us towards his brother. For a split second we both thought he was going to attack Dan, so he instinctively threw up his fist to defend himself. Marcus pushes his brother into the other room and slams the door behind them. Dan and I hurry out of the house. I think the old lady was sitting in the dark in the living room, but I didn't stop to look around as we were scurrying out. We called the cops when we got home. Didn't have cell phones then. But nothing really came of it because they said he didn't really do anything wrong. He didn't expose himself. He didn't try to attack us. They agreed it was bizarre, but nothing they can do about it. We asked around and no one knew these people, so we're not sure how she got our number. I don't know if they were just mentally ill, if she lied on purpose to get us over there, or why things happened the way they did. It was just scary as shit, feeling boxed in and not knowing what those creepy, almost naked dudes were thinking. Ever since then, I tend to avoid going inside other people's houses, unless I really know them. 2. A few months before my 9th birthday, I was almost kidnapped. Basically, this guy came into our backyard where my brother and I were playing, and told me he had some early birthday present for me in his car. But he needed help getting it out. And of course, I went to help him. My 6-year-old brother, the jealous little bastard that he was, went crying to my mum, asking why this guy didn't get him a present. This sent Mum flying out the door and into the car park behind our complex, and dragging me out of the shitty red 4-door sedan before the guy could pull out of the lot. But not before he put his sopping wet lips on my cheeks and his heavy hand on my waist. I'm 17, almost 18 now, but I'll still never forget the smell of stale cigarette smoke that lingered on his breath and the feeling of wetness on my cheek. Turns out the guy was an ex of my mom's, so she knew exactly who to report to the police. They found him that same day. After months of waiting for a court date, we finally got one. They never made me testify in front of him. Instead, my testimony was filmed at a previous date and played out in the courtroom while we were holed up in a shelter for women and children fleeing abuse. At some point, we received news that he had pleaded guilty, but was only sentenced to 1 year. This, of course, terrified me. In a year he'd be out, walking the same streets as me and my mum, and I didn't know how to deal with that. So we packed up and moved to a smaller town about 3 hours away from the city. It wasn't ideal, but I guess it was necessary. During the years we were there, we all moved on, and I didn't think too much of it once I stopped going to therapy for it, when I was around 12. About 2 years ago, we moved back into the city because my mom was offered a job she just couldn't turn down. I had completely forgotten about the events, and was mostly excited about reconnecting with childhood mates. We got a flat on the opposite end of the city from where I grew up, so I was bummed I wouldn't actually be seeing my old mates, but still, I was excited to start a new school and meet new people. Things went off without a hitch for the longest time. Then, late last year, while I was walking to school, I spotted a red car parked across the street of my school. I was flooded with dread, and I practically ran into the school, where I watched the car from the foyer for a few minutes. I know there are probably millions of red cars in this huge city that we live in. But before running into the building, I saw a dent on the driver's door, and remembered how my mom had repeatedly kicked and banged at the car door while she pulled on the handles. I felt ill, and went home early that day when the car disappeared. I tried to forget about it, and even tried to brush it off. Like, maybe it wasn't the same guy. How would he even know where I ended up? It's been like 9 years and he's probably forgotten about me, right? Still, I was pretty on edge for a while, but after a few dented red carless months, I forgot about it. After all, I was too worried about homework and shit. Graduation was coming up. Graduation is now 3 weeks away, and unfortunately, I will not be attending. In the past 3 months, I spotted the red car again. It would sometimes be sat in the car park across the street from our flat, other times across the street from my school. At some point last month, it trailed behind me on my morning walk to school. Since then, I have become too afraid to leave my home, and have isolated myself in my room. I have fallen behind in school and decided to drop out and just get my GED, much to my mom's dismay. I did tell her that I didn't want to go to school anymore, but I didn't say why. Last week I went to turn up the AC in my room because it had gotten really hot, and a red car outside of my window caught my eye right away. I can always tell when it is in fact the red car, and not just some random because of all the crap in the back seat. It looked like someone was living out of it or something. I can't stand being holed up in here anymore, and I'm considering going to the police to get the initial case file because while I remember the color of his hair and the smell of his breath, I can't seem to recall a face or a name, and I'd like to know exactly who to look out for. A part of me still thinks it might not be him, but I've lost too much at this point and I really need to know. I haven't left the house on my own for weeks now. I would like to go to the police, but honestly I feel like I can't report this because I have no real evidence of anything like that. I don't know what to do. I'm scared, and I feel so alone. I've never told anyone besides the police about this, and I was really hoping I wouldn't have to. 3. A few years ago, I spent a couple of days with my girlfriend at the time in Barnsley. Having missed the last train, my dad very kindly agreed to come and pick me up. An 18-mile round trip from our home in Rochdale. I decided I'd wait for him in the interchange, an easy landmark, nice and bright, security guards around, and some pretty soothing music. Quiet too. So I'm sat there with a couple of plastic bags with alcohol and crisps in them, leftovers from our night together, when this guy comes up to me. There is a reason I'm not putting this in creepy encounters, you'll see. Trailing a case with wheels. It looks pretty scruffy, but seems relatively harmless. "You're just a young lad," he tells me. "You shouldn't be drinking that shite. Let me have it." Figuring he was probably homeless, I handed over the booze. We'd mixed lager and cider into some unholy mix anyway, so I wasn't really planning to drink it. I also offer him a tube of Pringles. Due to my political beliefs, helping the homeless like this is something I'll willingly do. Not that he could go to sleep in a tube of Pringles. "So what are you off to?" "Rochdale." "Aye, whereabouts?" I tell him the specific area I live in. That's when he reacts with shock and asks for a lift to the street behind mine, naming it in the process. 40 miles from home, what are the chances that this guy, whose abode is apparently a few houses away from mine, should find me somewhere I shouldn't be at that time of night, and ask for a lift? I tell him there's no way my dad would accept it, but by now he's on it. There's no shaking this guy, he really wants a lift. He asks me over and over again. I try to walk away, telling him I'll ring my dad and ask. My dad firmly tells me no, as I expected. But when I look behind me, this guy is walking towards me. I dart to the top of the escalator, which leads to the bridge towards the train station, and speak to the security guard who does Suite FA. I keep moving away from the guy, and he's surprisingly fast. I explained to my dad just how persistent he was, but he didn't seem to get it. Even then, though, he just seemed desperate, and sure, it scared me. but he didn't seem odd or creepy as such, just wanting to get to where he wanted to be. We do crazy things when we want to get home badly. When we got outside though, he threatened me, told me he'd put me through the windscreen if I didn't let him have a lift, and also told me he'd tell my dad he was my boyfriend. He also demanded to know my name, and I foolishly said, John Smith. I felt like a moron. My dad pulled up and I darted towards him, jumping in the car and pointing the guy out to him. He was hot on my tail. My dad could now finally see just why I couldn't shake the guy. Before we knew it, he had his head in the car door showing my dad his passport, and my dad, bless him, didn't have a damn clue what to do at this point. Who would? So he conceded to give the guy a lift, if only to shut him up. I'm coming to the Let's Not Meet, don't worry. So we're driving along and this guy is talking for England. Again, though, the only truly disturbing thing he did was threaten me, which is pretty out there. But this was the situation we were in, so we tried to make the best of it. I gave him one-word answers and played along, and just tried to placate him somewhat as we made our way home. My dad was obviously nervous as we took a few wrong turns, but eventually, we were racing down the M62, just desperate to get back. Close to home though, he starts talking about knives. He tells us how he's planning to cut this guy to go after him. What the fuck? Now we're scared. We continue to try to placate him, but he is blatantly dangerous. He also reveals he's on a day release from a mental hospital in the Barnsley area. Great. We've helped a potentially dangerous resident escape. My dad puts his foot down, and as soon as we end up in the area of Rochdale we want to be in, we drop him off at the pub on the main road in an effort to get away, and my dad, well, I've never seen him burn petrol so quick. He was out of there. We sped round to our street before the guy had the chance to amble his way up in our direction. Just what the fuck did we come close to encountering there? The alarm bells were going off, don't get me wrong, of course they were. But, damn. My dad felt so stupid afterwards, but really, you had to have been in his shoes to sympathize. He's a strong guy, a clever guy. And we both knew it was dodgy as hell, but we gave the guy the benefit of the doubt. Never again.